Good morning, everybody. Sorry, I'm a few seconds late. I can't talk. I had to get a drink before starting. Welcome to Watches with Dennis. I am Dennis, and I am back after being gone for a week. So it has been a couple weeks since we last did a live stream. I was not on vacation. I had a work trip, and so I am extremely exhausted. I probably should have canceled today as well. However, I didn't want to miss 2 weeks in a row. I thought that was a little excessive. Unfortunately, the travel schedule got a lot harder than we had anticipated. So I got back here about 2 a.m. my time, and it is 10 a.m. my time. So, and I did not mow before I left because the weather was so bad. So I actually just came in from, well, I showered first, but I came in from mowing. So if I'm trying to catch my breath still, I was punching everything really close. The grass was still a little wet, so I ended up taking longer than I thought it would. Otherwise, I thought, I got plenty of time to get through all of that this morning, and I did, but it was a close thing. So, but I planned ahead. I knew that I was not going to be in the best mood to be able to do research because the work trip thing was very intense. It was a week-long training thing. So, long story short, I basically had 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. days, and we started on Saturday when I flew out, and we did it all the way through Friday, which was only a half day, and then I tried to fly back, but weather complicated things. So, but I am back now. So what we are going to do is I don't have any new sort of pre-recorded stuff to really emphasize. I think I shot one short on with my Rolex Explorer 2 because it's my one GMT watch, well, other than my G-Shock. And so that's the one I wear usually when I fly. So I had that. I cannot tell you the last time I wore a single watch only for a week. It has been years since I did that, but because I normally don't have trips that are this long. So anyway, that is what it is. So we're gonna have a lot of fun today talking not about Rolex, but about integrated sports watches. So good morning, Kevin. Welcome to the live stream. Glad you were able to make it. And good morning, Scott. You see, yes, that honestly, the burden I bear in honor of the 99-cent Club folks it's overwhelming. So yes, when you're paying me almost $1, not quite $1, but almost $1 a month, I do feel a moral obligation to give you guys content because, hey, you could choose not to subscribe, and I want to make you feel like you're getting your almost dollar's worth. So that's what I do. Speaking of which, today on the wrist is the Oris Pro Pilot X. Well, it was the G-Shock. So this is going to be a day where I record multiple watches, which is I don't usually wear more than one watch a day, but that obviously I didn't mow in this. Well, I guess it wasn't obvious. I used to mow in my Explorer 2 when it was the only watch I had. So, but I wore this because it's an integrated sports watch, not steel, titanium. And in fact, it's not truly integrated. And I guess I should say before we dive into today's topic, almost all, if not all of these, are not truly integrated bracelet watches. Those are well out of fashion. Those are the ones where the case and the bracelet are truly combined, like permanently combined. Basically, no one does this anymore. It just, we have a style that we look to in order to achieve integration. So when I was coming up with this topic, because I wanted something a little evergreen so that I wouldn't have to do research while I was gone, in part because I knew that the timetables were going to be really tight. I was told this training was very intensive and I wouldn't want to do anything in the background when I had what little downtime I did. And as those of you who have been sadly subjected to my pinball stuff know, there was a big pinball release that was already known to be happening this week. So I knew what little research time I would need to do for that so I could do my shows on that. So we went with this. And I think we got a lot of, I'm pretty pleased with my selection. I have quite a range of price points. We're basically going to range to like $400, which is a pretty big hint about what we're going to talk about first, up to over $50,000. My only rules were it had to be integrated bracelet style and stainless steel, at least for most of the watch. Going a little bit further, I did add some other parameters. Basically, I took the most basic version. So some of these watches have like chronograph versions and such. I generally tried to go time or time plus date where I could. That was not always possible within the parameters. I also, as a general rule, went ahead and did blue dial watches There were a few exceptions where models that weren't available in the configuration I mandated. So I went with, they're all conservative. So you're not going to see like a bright red integrated sports bracelet watch on today's show. But I thought it'd be a good place to start because this was the hotness really during the pandemic. Obviously, there are still certain models, discontinued models like the 5711 from Patek that remain extremely popular, even though they've fallen like from an investment purpose quite dramatically from where they used to be. They are still higher than they were at the start of the pandemic. So the watch style just became really, really popular. Is it falling out of fashion now? I want to say yes, but we've obviously seen relatively recent releases and continued iterations of releases from Oris, Christopher Ward. We finally saw, what was it? Was it Daniel Charles or something? Had one at Watches and Wonders that was pretty weird looking. So just like green dials, they're never truly dead. We always got to have a few people late to the party. Good morning, Patrick. Welcome. Now people can see it who are watching not live. Welcome to the live stream. Okay, let's go ahead and let's get started because I have no idea how long it's going to take for me to get through all these. All of these, we're just going to use watch brand pages today. They're all linked in the video description. So if you want to know what I'm going to be talking about preemptively, you can just look at the description and you will see everything that I plan to go over. But we are going to start with one that I owned, and it's the only one I've included on this list that I owned, and that is the Tissot PRX. Now, there are actually two flavors of this. This is the version I owned. It's 40 millimeter watch. It's the quartz powered version. You can tell generally because the mechanical ones have the waffle pattern dials, and they tended to do the sunburst dials for these that use the quartz movement. And people who have watched this channel for a while know that I'm a pretty big fan of sunburst. It's one of my favorite dial motifs. I'm not such a big fan of waffle. I'm trying to think if I have any waffle pattern watches. Not really. Texture is okay. I've never been big into the waffle. It's all right. I don't love it. I didn't own this watch all that long. And the biggest reason was, and this is true for a lot of integrated bracelet watches, they can wear bigger than what you think they will based off of hearing the diameter. And the reason, I'll blow back up the picture again, is when we do a lug-to-lug measurement, we're going to go like from the case edge to the case edge like you would expect. However, because of the integratedness in most, not all, but most of the ways the bracelets are often incorporated, the very first link actually cannot move. It's not flexible at all. So it essentially means that the watch is a little bit longer than what the lug-to-lug of the case itself would tell you, because the first links in these bracelets, even though they are technically removable, are permanent. They're integrated. And so it's bigger than you think. So this ended up wearing larger than I liked. Plus, I got it just because I wanted to test out integrated sports bracelet watch and see if I liked it. It was okay. I wasn't enamored with it. I think the fit and finish is pretty good, especially for the price point that you get at here. And so I do recommend it to people that want to try something out. Had I known, I can't remember if it was out when I bought this. If it had been out, it had just come out. There's a 35 millimeter version that Tissot offers. It would have fit me a lot better because of the actual distance with the bracelet. And I think I would have been happier had I gotten that. But I sold it very, very quickly on eBay, I think, because there's plenty of demand for these watches. So I mentioned this one, but I'm going to go ahead and kind of in tandem mention there's the mechanical version. Now, the first one, as you can see on the site, was just under $400, and you can find these for less quite easily. If you're willing to double up and almost double the price, go to $725, you can go ahead and get one that's powered by the Powermatic 80-hour power reserve movement. Tissot uses the Powermatic 80 in a lot of watches, not just the PRX, but it definitely is an option, especially if you like that waffle pattern dial, which is something that I associate more with Audemars Piguet and the Royal Oak. I wasn't really keen on, it felt a little too derivative for my liking, but if you really like the style, this is way more approachable than a Royal Oak. And it doesn't have all the Royal Oak motifs. It's still got the old Tissot C star, which I believe is what the PRX is kind of, they're homaging themselves. They're not homaging the Royal Oak. Maybe with the pattern they are, but the watch case itself is something that they did back in the 70s. So in that regard, you have a lot of Tissot-isms in here. It's really only the waffle that reminds me of the Royal Oak. But if you want mechanical, that is an option. And unlike on the quartz versions, you do get the display case back. Basically, it's an unfinished movement. You get a slightly decorated rotor, but again, we're talking sub $800. So this is a lot of watch for the money. 100 meters of water resistance is true for both versions. And so in that regard, the Tissot, I think, still remains sort of the de facto recommendation on the affordable end of the spectrum to get into an integrated stainless steel bracelet watch. Obviously, with being well south of $500 for the quartz versions means a lot of people are able to save up and get them, even if they don't like to put a lot of money towards watches. And if you are more demanding about that, you want things to be mechanical, again, we're significantly under $1,000 still with this option. So I really like, and they come in a variety of colors. And again, this, I'm showing you the 40 millimeter version because it was the original, but other sizes are available at this point for the Tissot PRX. I'm not going to show you the digital ones. I hate the digital ones. I don't recommend them. I know some viewer, longtime viewer, has one and really, really likes it. I just can't get behind the display design. I think it's definitely homaging the 70s, but that was an era where they didn't know what they were doing with those LCDs and didn't know how to make them look good, in my opinion. But catching up with the chat before we jump up quite a bit to our most expensive watch that I want to talk about today. Hey, hello, welcome to the live stream. Joe, thank you. Virginia Beach. I assume Virginia Beach is in Virginia, but I did not mention it. But my week where I was in intensive training, I was in Charlottesville for the entire week. So, and I had not been to Virginia since I think 97 or so. I don't think it's tough to say because I've been to DC, a few times, and maybe I went over onto the Virginia side and I don't remember. And Medgas guy. Or Medgas guy. That's probably how I'm supposed to say it. Medgas guy. Sounds like an anesthesiologist name. Welcome to the live stream. Glad you could make it. All right. So let's jump to Patek. Now, this is I'm least pleased with this pick. And that's just because, as I said at the start, I wanted to do really time plus date only stainless steel integrated sports watches. And there just isn't one in the current. Another rule. I didn't tell you the rule. I didn't tell you all the rules. The other rule is only things that are in current catalog. So I can't give you a 5711. It's discontinued. That would have been the obvious answer anyway. There are some ladies targeted Patek Nautilus designs that are pretty simplistic, but again, most of the people who watch the channel are men and probably wouldn't be interested in those. So we end up with this, which is more complicated than I wanted it to be. What with the power reserve up at the 10 o'clock position, and then at kind of the 7:30 position, you've got the date complication plus a moon phase. So this is a very, very complicated watch. This watch is over $50,000. They do have simplistic looking time only Nautilus, and I almost picked it, but then I saw in the specs it wasn't steel, it was white gold. And I have to rule out white gold. I have one white gold watch. It's a dress watch for obvious reasons. Gold is soft, and especially at this point where most gold watches are going to be 18 karat gold watches, it's a very soft metal. And I don't see the point in getting an integrated sports watch. And I'm assuming even if you're spending $50,000 that you want to be able to do something in it. I just couldn't bring myself to pick gold. And I was still on the fence about titanium, and I decided I was just going to lock us in and say it's only going to be stainless steel. You can have some trappings, like you want to do some bezel stuff in another metal. I'll allow it, but this is still not a great pick. Water resistance to 30 meters. Bear in mind, Patek has changed how they do their water resistance. I don't know why they did that. It seems highly arrogant to me, which maybe that's why they did it. But basically, they're saying they rebranded like all their watches to 30 meters water resistant, but it's you can truly dive down 30 meters. I mean, I wish that water resistance had always meant that, but it's a little late to try and redefine it. And I get it, you're Patek, but you're also not the most profitable watch manufacturer. You don't have, in my view, you don't have the position in the market to redefine what water resistance means. But hey, Patek does whatever it wants. When they abandoned the Geneva seal so they could go with silicone hairsprings, they just created their own seal. So I guess Patek gonna Patek. But anyway, I've never really cared for this watch. It's 40 millimeters, just like the Tissot. Very, very thin though, 8.5 millimeters in terms of thickness. You do get a display case back. And as I noted, it's over $50,000, $51,260, and there's probably a wait list for it. So anyway, it's here. I've never been able to embrace the Nautilus design. It's one of those designs for me that I always feel should have stayed in the 70s. I do like the more complicated ones in terms of how they look versus the real simple ones, which screams 70s TV to me. But a deeply, deeply popular model with a lot of people. I do think we will end up seeing relatively soon. I wasn't going to make predictions, but I will. In the next 2 years, I think we will see something that's 5711-esque, basically probably time plus date in steel. But there will be a change up, so it'll be pretty clear that's not the 5711. I think that they're going to want to have that cash cow back. I mean, Patek does fine regardless, but I think they'll want that back in the repertoire, especially because I don't think that this whole let's do calf leather and stamp it so it looks like denim thing, I don't think that's going to play for a lot of people. But yeah, I've been wrong before. So we definitely will see what happens with that. But this is the most expensive one I want to throw out there. But yeah, it's not a design I really, other than the thinness, I've never really resonated with the Nautilus. But it's been a hype beast. So you can't get the main hype beast one. But hey, you can't get a 5711. I guess you can look at a 5712. Plumber. Okay, well, anesthesiologist. Plumbing's probably harder, quite frankly. Joe says, I've been looking at the Chopard Alpine Eagle 41 Blue Dial. It is selling for 60 to 70% retail, depending if you do private versus professional seller. Interested in thoughts and comparisons to Gerard Perregaux's Laureato and the Piaget Polo S. Okay. Without loading them up, and folks in the chat who are watching live, feel free to share your reactions if you know what these watches look like. All right, I would get the Alpine Eagle over both of those options now, but you need to know my biases going into it. All right, so let's tackle Gerard Perregaux first because that's the one that most people know for me. I don't entertain any Gerard Perregaux watches. And that has nothing to do with the company, quite frankly, other than I find the Laureato way too, in my view, derivative looking of a Royal Oak. I understand, though, that much like Tissot, they have their own design and they have their own lineage, and that's not a fair comparison. But it is a comparison I still do. However, I know a lot of people who watch the channel who have Laureatos and say they are excellent watches. So I set that just in your mind. I really like the eagle eye effect of the Alpine Eagle watches, so I think it is extremely attractive, and it has its own personality, even though it has a lot of those same shapes that you might associate otherwise with Nautilus and Royal Oak. And because of that dial texture, it is so distinctive that I do not think anyone would ever mistake it for a Royal Oak. And I can't say the same for the Laureato. The Polo S, absolutely not. It would be my dead last recommendation. I've actually looked at those several times myself. The problem is when I start looking at the fit and finish and comparing it to other watches in the bracket, I just don't feel it's there. I think the design language is a lot messier. I think the dial is a lot uglier, actually. When you start looking at things, it seems like they've done things to fit the movement rather than building everything kind of from the ground up. So there's actually quite a lot of finishing at the price point, especially because you can get those at discount too. But it's just, the more I looked into it, it's just kind of like I see where they cut the corners all throughout the watch. And I'm not saying it's not fair for the price, but especially when we're talking about what we can get off of retail with other brands, I just don't think they're quite there yet. If I was looking at Piaget, I would look at something outside of the Polo S at least. So those are my thoughts. But good afternoon, Trap Vision, or it's morning still here, but glad you could make it. Medgas guy says he was never a Nautilus fan, so same boat as me, just never clicked for me. Pocket Watch Time says Piaget, no. Gerard Perregaux, yes, but Eagle is a bit fancier. So yeah, it depends if you want the finish or not. The Polo, it's got its own look. Again, I have looked into them. I remember seeing one of Tim Masso's years ago. So I saw it not years ago, but he filmed it years ago. He did a side-by-side with it and another watch. I can't remember if it was a Laureato or what, but I think it was a Nautilus, quite frankly. And maybe that was unfair, but because it was so similar looking from the case shape, you started to see where Piaget made all their compromises. And it was interesting. And it was good to have that sort of side-by-side. Tuna, thank you for joining, and thank you for being a 99-cent club member. I do always appreciate that. And to the others who are as well. I didn't mention that earlier today. Well, let's stay expensive, right? So we talked about the Nautilus on a super complicated one at that, because there's not really a good time date one that exists currently in the Patek catalog. So let's go ahead and do another one that I would most likely never buy, and that is the Royal Oak. Oh, but I do like this better than the Nautilus by quite a bit. So this is the 15510 ST with a whole bunch of other stuff behind it. It's if you could get it at retail, it would be just under $29,000, which is where I think a lot of these high-end luxury sports watches do make sense given the finishing and such, you could argue. Color match date window I like. I've noted I don't really care so much for waffle patterns in and of themselves. However, having handled an 1159, which obviously is a very different watch, but it had this similar dial aesthetic. It was more guilloche than waffle, but you can kind of see in the image here the sunbursting that happens with this. They do play with the light very, very well. The pictures don't do that light play justice, so I would recommend going and checking one out in person so you could kind of see if you're really into how, you know, refraction and deflection and reflection of light plays with the dial. If that's your thing, take a look, because it might be too busy for you, but you might also think if this looks too staid that it actually is more playful than it might look like from this. But the traditional blue, you got the screws in the bezel, so it's all the very, very, very true to form look. Very difficult to get the Royal Oaks. I don't like the games that Audemars Piguet plays. I think anyone who anyone who criticizes Rolex has not looked at the gamemanship that Audemars Piguet plays. Audemars is worse about it because they control most of their distribution. So since most of the places you can buy them new are at boutiques, and the boutiques make you play games, Audemars Piguet makes you play games. Whereas with Rolex, most of the authorized dealers are not actually owned by Rolex. So the games that you might have to play are the games that the AD came up with. They're not Rolex's games. However, because the price point starting in Audemars Piguet is so much higher than the starting price point of Rolex, most people don't ever encounter that. I've been to one Audemars boutique because I don't live near one, and I was treated fine, but I also deliberately only asked about code 1159s because I know they have a harder time selling them. So it's overall, though, I've always thought this design looked pretty good. I think they wear pretty well, even though they tend to be like, this is a 41 millimeter watch. A lot thicker than the Nautilus, though. At least the Nautilus we talked about earlier. So this is 10.5 millimeters. That's still extremely wearable. So I don't want to state too much on that. 50 meters of water resistance, and this is sort of the true water resistance. So it's not as good of a sports watch. Like I would normally want 100 on anything that we're saying is a sports watch. However, the finish, the brushing, the work on all of that looks really, really good. Dial, yes, the movement. It's been a while, and I don't know if they're showing off any movement shots on their website. I don't think so. Oh, look, they're trying to show you what the Texas boutique I went to. But anyway, so this is one. It's a classic, of course. The thing is, I'm only showing you one example. If you love Royal Oaks, I would say it's embarrassing in terms of so you got code 1159. I wasn't going to do this, but we'll talk about it. Notice this now. They are down to 4 lines. 3 of them are Royal Oak. This is how dependent Audemars is on Royal Oak. So you got the code 1159, which is their whatever. It's not dress watches specific. It's more like dressy, sporty fashion watches. Then you got regular Royal Oaks, the offshore collection, and the concepts, which are like the uber expensive fancy pants mechanical stuff. So just going like into the Royal Oak collection, I showed you one fairly basic example, but they've got all sorts of configurations with different dial colors and different complications and different metals. So as you can see, this is all current catalog. So there's a lot of options out there if you had the money. But having heard from some others who are into Audemars Piguet, be aware that there is a lot of gamesmanship. And my understanding is you are generally, if ever, told to buy something else before you're allowed to buy one of the baseline popular Royal Oak models. You have to work your way. They want you to curate a collection with them. I hate that crap, but the watch is iconic, and I do kind of like the look. So I did think it was definitely worth talking about here. So Moving on, Tuna says, Dennis, I bought a gold tone Gucci with no indices on eBay. Do I suffer from mental health issues? Just bad taste. Just bad taste. And I'm sitting here in my t-shirt and my KU shorts. I don't have taste, but I have more taste than that. But it is a problem, and you should seek help. I don't know if a mental health professional would help you, other than you just need to purge that out. Go browse Seiko for a little while and find something, palate cleanse that out of your system, and get something far more attractive and functional. Mad Gas Guy says, my favorite watch brand is Vacheron Constantin. I actually do not have an overseas in this collection. I didn't want to just do all three of the Holy Trinity, plus the overseas. I didn't pick all of this stuff just because it's popular, but the overseas is easier to get. The blue dial ones are a challenge, though. I'm hearing people are finding a little bit easier time finding them. But, I don't know. The overseas has kind of grown on me a little bit, but if I was to go Vacheron, I would want to get one of their, their malt watches, the Tonneau shape, or the 1921. I like their dress stuff. So I like Vacheron, but I always look at their dress watches. But I have a dress watch bias. So when I think about Vacheron, I don't look at the overseas really, because it's not my thing. So not out of them. Joe says, I hear the AP Royal Oak and Moser Streamliner have the best bracelets, but not held either in hand. Now, I have not handled the Streamliner, and nor have I the Royal Oak bracelet. I was going to say, have I had an AP bracelet? No, I've tried everything I've touched with AP was on strap. So yeah, I can't comment on that. And I own a Moser, but not a Streamliner, and not, again, it's on a strap, which I have no good. For me, the best, and it wasn't integrated. It's not integrated, but Rolex, I've always liked their bracelets a lot. And at that price point, I think they're I found them better than my experience with Grand Seiko, Omega, Zenith. It's Oris. This Oris bracelet's okay, but because this is an integrated style, this is the Pro Pilot X, but I find it pretty comfortable, but it's titanium, and because the watch is so light, I feel like we're talking about different things at that point. So that's interesting. Yeah, unfortunately, I can't give an expert opinion, so I'm just going to keep my mouth shut on what the best integrated sports bracelet is. That was a very wordy way to say nothing, but that's now what I've ended up doing. Koji, welcome to the live stream, and for being a 99-cent club member. They should just rename it being Audemars Piguet, the Royal Oak Company at this point. Yeah, probably. I know I've put out, and I'm still, I don't know how many questions I'm going to take, but I do have a post on YouTube and also on my Instagram. I do have a Watches with Dennis Instagram now. The YouTube links to it, where I do have a Q&A thing up. I'm going to do kind of like Federico does for Talks Watches. So I'm soliciting questions, and I've perused some of the ones that have come in already, and I know someone has asked me about Audemars Piguet, and I think that question is going to make the cut because it's a pretty interesting one. All right, so Tuna is explaining why he ended up buying a Gucci watch. I understand. Look, if it's just boredom, you just whimsical money spending, sure, I get it. That's fine. It's not really fine, but it's fine. You do you with your money. It's always your money. Just accept that you made the wrong decision. Patrick says, hey, Tuna, I bought my first gold tone wristwatch coming soon. Seiko Quartz VFA. Interesting. And he also likes the stream. For me, the Streamliner is too weird of a case. I have no interest in it. Moser is a weird company for me. I like, I'm going to just round. I like half their watches, and half their watches are so whimsical, they piss me off. So now most of the time it's when they get rid of indices on the dial, like every time they Vanta black, they can't do indices. If they want to, hide their script, they got more and more on their script for their logo, where at first it was simple and white. That's what mine has. Then they started making it the same color as the dial, which looks pretty cool. Then they started being like, well, we don't even need to put our name on the dial. And I'm cool with that too. But I do want at least hour markers. I want hour markers. So, and there are Streamliners with those. This is the shape, definitely a unique looking watch versus anything else in the integrated vein. No one's going to look at a Streamliner and think Moser copied anyone, at least not that I'm aware of. But I don't like the look very much. So we're not going to talk about it. What we're going to talk about is Christopher Ward, a brand I generally don't care too much for. And I don't really care too much for this watch, but I do think it's very, very interesting. And a lot of people really, really like it. Now, I haven't handled it, So I'm not going to tell you about how it feels from my own experience. A lot of people who own them say it wears really well. This is an option that I think is very attractive, though, for people that are willing to spend more money than that Tissot. Because remember, in the Tissot PRX line, we're talking $400 to $800 US, basically, depending if you want quartz or you want mechanical. But people who have handled those, because they're readily accessible, and handled the 12, do tend to say that the 12 has a lot more fine finish to it, which you would expect given that the pricing is higher. Now, they do have these in titanium as well. The titanium ones also come with a superior movement. But again, I am doing stainless steel integrated sports watches. So I had to do something like that. So for around $1,200 US, you get a fairly decently finished watch. You get indices for all the hours and minute markings on the chapter ring. So I like that aspect of it. Color match date window. At this price point, it is. I like that this. I will tip the cap to Christopher Ward for helping demonstrate you don't have to just have white backed date windows when your watches are sub $5,000. I went in a few weeks ago and I tried on one of those the Saffron Omega Aquaterras. And I was like, the watch looked so good, but I had forgotten because it'd been years since they did the announcement for those that they didn't color match the date windows. And I'm just like, at this price, it's over a $5,000 watch. Why is this not color matched? I don't understand. I guess sometimes you don't always want a color match. Like this Oris, they didn't color match it. I guess I'll show you. But they did black, so it's different. And they've done different colors on the different mod. Here you go. You can see kind of what they did with the date. So kind of there. We gotta get Dennis's head out of the way. There you go. Now you can see the date. So you see, they mixed it in really well in a way, kind of tied it to the color of the loom because this is actually loomed. It's garbage loom because they painted the loom black. But like I get stuff like that. But like this is always my favorite, like what Christopher Ward did here. So I hear it wears really well. I never could get behind this design. So that was always my problem with it. So it depends on how complicated you like designs. I do tend to lean more simplistic. You've already heard me earlier in the stream talk about I wasn't a big fan of the waffle pattern on the PRX Powermatic 80 models. And that's kind of the one aspect that I'm on the fence about with the Royal Oak. Even though I do think the Royal Oak does a lot better job with the light effect that they have going on with their dial. This, I find the dial texture pattern, I guess, of their logo or the Swiss flag or whatever they're doing, overly complicated. Very aggressive markers too. The way I describe this watch, I still stand by this stance, is when I saw this watch, it felt like to me they took like 6 other watch ideas of integrated bracelet watches from higher end brands, glued them all together, and then threw in a 7th component. Or another joke would be it's called the 12 because they stole 12 ideas and glued them all together. And I think if they had scaled down the ideas, that taking ideas from other companies, hey, I totally get it. I just feel like they took a lot. And so you've got like a weird shaped bezel, and then you've got these sort of Nautilus-esque crown guards, and you got kind of a texturing pattern that's like the Royal Oak, but it's a different texturing pattern, but it's even busier, so it's less elegant. And it's just little. There was a Kitchen Nightmares or Ramsay's Nightmares. It's a British version of the show if anyone's ever watched it. And there was one episode where he's in with this really fancy restaurant, and they've got all these high-end, highly trained chefs. And every meal dish would go down the line, and they'd everyone would throw a new little flourish into the dish. And so the dishes like that, all these ingredients, they were super complicated. And I don't know, maybe it's because I grew up on like chicken and rice, but I don't know how you can distinguish that, like that many flavors all combined. It just seems overwhelming. And that's how I feel when I see the 12, is I find it overwhelmingly complicated. I think that there's too much design in this. But that's my take. Patrick says he hadn't heard the one about the Stole 12 ideas. The Stole 12, that might have been a me thing, but there you go. They can write me and say, no, we didn't. Like, we came up with them, but I was like, I still feel like there are 12 design elements in this watch, and that's probably something like 7 too many. But hey, we all have our own philosophies. Kochi knows what I'm talking about. The Ramsey episode. It's like, yes, it's pretentious. I like dress watches, but I don't want things pretentious. And that, yes, that was pretentious. And Tuna says, take it from a Gucci wearer. This integrated bracelet thing is just a flash in the pan. Well, we are seeing less and less. I only remember one, what was it, Gerald Charles coming out this Watches and Wonders with a really, really distinctive one this go around. But all right, so I've talked a bit about, a few that I just, I don't like the Nautilus that much. The Royal Oak's okay. I'm not really feeling the 12. Let me do one that I really do like the look of, and that is the Parmigiani Fleurier Tonda PF Micro Rotor. Now, you'll see steel platinum here. This is a steel watch. It's just the bezel that's made in platinum. I tried to find one with a steel bezel. Parmigiani doesn't do it. So, but I still wanted to include it. So here you go. 23,500 Swiss francs. So I don't know, roughly 26,000 US dollars. So this is a little bit less than the Royal Oak would be. But otherwise, it's more than all the other watches we've talked about, other than, of course, the Patek, which was $51,000. So when these came out, I really liked them quite a bit. Again, a textured, this is kind of there's a term for this style of texturing. I can't remember what it is. It's like named for a grain. Oh, there we go. Guilloche Grandiange. So I do like this. It looks like it would be busy zoomed in, but zoomed out, it looks really subtle. Kind of like a houndstooth suit jacket might be subtle. I like their new logo a lot. I do have a Parmigiani with the old design. I like the new logo quite a bit. They've started to do more of these in no date. So it used to be you had to go down to 36 millimeter if you wanted the no date, but they did just release this year some versions that are going to be no date, no seconds hand. So this is our minute only. That's probably going to be polarizing to a lot of people. I have heard, I wanted to handle one of these. Unfortunately, I didn't have an opportunity to get to the store when I was in Dallas, which has one. I have heard, though, we were talking bracelets earlier and about how good is the bracelet on like the Streamliner. I have heard the bracelet experience on the Tonda PF is very, very, very nice. I wish I was able to say firsthand, so I cannot. But I would say if you have the opportunity, and you're thinking integrated bracelet watches, and you just want to get a feel for how the bracelets are, try this one out. The one other thing I've heard a lot about this is these actually wear much closer to their diameter than I talked earlier about how the Tissot PRX 40 millimeters wear quite a bit bigger than you might normally think of with a regular round watch 40 millimeter. I've heard similar regarding Czapek Antarctique, which actually is going to be our next watch. But I've heard this wears very much like what it says on the tin. So again, also very, very thin watch. This is even thinner than the Royal Oak we talked about. This is 7.8 millimeters. I think this is the thinnest watch I've got for you in today's assortment of choices. So there's just a lot really going on here. For a long time, these got a lot of attention with the Retroponte and stuff, some of those features. I would always lean more to the simpler one. They are starting to come down and be available secondhand for less than new. So I don't know, because I have a dress watch Parmigiani and I do try to do brand diversity if I would get this at this point, but it definitely was something I thought about for a while. But I wear more dress watches at work. So that kind of made the decision, but I still deeply like these a lot. I'm starting to wonder if, until they came out with their new Toric this year, I was starting to get a little concerned that Parmigiani, under their he's been there for years now, but their new CEO was just going to be the Tonda PF company. And while I like the watch a lot, I don't want it to only be the only thing they make. But they have shown now, just like Czapek has been showing the willingness to branch out of the Antarctique, that they've used these to kind of shore up the financials. But it's really classy is the word I would use. It's a real classy looking watch. Very nice looking movement too. All the Parmigiani movements look really good out of the what's the Valjoux manufacturer, or Vaucher does the movements. It's all like kind of a vertically integrated thing of all under the same consortium. So anyway, it's I like it a lot. Scott, welcome to Livestream, Scott. That Tonda is a nice piece, but 25,000 is pushing it. Yes. And the platinum bezel isn't enough to be like, oh, yes, platinum. Yeah, 25,000, the thing was entirely platinum. Absolutely. Who wouldn't love that? But And Patrick says Antarctique osmium. I'm probably misaying that. Osmium dial. I'm not sure what one that is. Let me show you again. I tried to do blue dials where I could. So I've got the Glacier Blue. This is one of their Passage to Drake Antarctiques, which there are several. There are a couple of different approaches you can kind of see here where they've got the double indice marker where I'm moving the mouse on the screen. And then they got other ones like this where they put the big old 12, which is a very unique look. I'm actually okay with both versions of this. But anyway, so here's kind of the other end. We talked Parmigiani, and I've actually looked a lot at the Antarctiques. Again, they have a few different sizes available. The big difference to me is the movement. So again, you have this kind of leans more on the Christopher Ward side, this particular version. I actually like some of the other colors better. Fairly patterned, I think a little more in your face, flashy, busy sort of style dial. I don't think it goes quite as far as the Christopher Ward one does, but I think it's close. And I think you could easily argue and say maybe this one's the one that's too far. Their movement, as you can see, very what I think of as modern industrial. So you got a lot of like media blasted, bead blasted movement finishing. You're not doing a bunch of Côte de Genève. Really though, but you can appreciate the precision. Micro rotor, again, kind of like the Tonda. But whereas like with the Tonda, you see the traditional striping, plate work, and all of that. This individual finger bridges for each gear of the going train, very, very impressive looking movement. Granted, we mostly look at the dial, but I hear these wear a little bit bigger than what they advertise. However, they do tend to be smaller than a lot of integrated watch. Not by much. A lot of the ones we've looked at are kind of like 41, maybe 42. Tissot, of course, is 40. This is 40.5. So pretty good in that regard. And I cannot remember the thickness on these. You can get them on rubber straps too. You know, it's all fake integrated bracelet watches these days. But I was trying to remember how thin it is because it does have a micro rotor, but it's pretty thin. So I don't remember if it's as thin as we could download the technical file. Do we? Oh, it's going to try and save it in my downloads folder. No, I don't think. I don't want to read it right now, guys. I'm too tired. So sorry, I'm not downloading the PDF. The downloads folder will have to remain empty. So let me, well, since you mentioned it, Patrick, can I find, will it blend? Where's the search, guys? Where's the search button on this site? I want to look at this, whatever osmium dial is while we're at it, but I don't see a search. I see a place to stick my email address in. Well, all right, you're going to look at me for a little bit because I don't subject people to searches when I remember. And Antarctique osmium. I have to look back at Patrick's comment to know how to spell the thing. All right. Is that one that's kind of the... Oh, okay, the frozen star. All right. All right, let's see if I can throw that up. Here we go. Oh, this is interesting. Okay. All right, I see. Yeah, you and your different materials. I see why you would like this. It kind of reminds me of meteorite, but it looks quite different. I mean, it's just its own textured sort of pattern. Okay. Yeah, this one wouldn't be my pick, probably in part because I have trouble even making up the branding with the colorway. I wish they just wouldn't have put Czapek on the glass. I think that's on it's probably on the dial. Anyway, I like the color though, but I love gray. It's my favorite color. So, okay, interesting. Tuna likes it a lot, and he's a Gucci fish, so he knows what he likes. All right, this is the one I wanted to end with. Ingenieur, right? The Ingenieur, a classic, right? Well, this is the new version last year. $11,700. Now, when this watch dropped, this is what everyone, myself included, talked about. I've looked at a number of the Ingenieurs since this came out. It was never a model I explored. I'd seen them, but I'd never really explored the catalog until the new one came out. I would say of all the ones I've seen, I probably like this new one's design the best. Again, we've got a complicated patterning going on, but the price is what distracted all of us. So, okay, you got this mix of vertical and like waffle and then vertical, or excuse me, horizontal line work. Again, is it too busy? With subtle conservative colors like black, I think it looks okay. Maybe in a brighter color, I'd get more of the Christopher Ward vibe. Overall, I liked a lot about the way this looks. It's got its own, it's Genta design, all of that. The price to me remains absolutely ridiculous. This is a stainless steel watch for $12,000, and they charged even more for the titanium. I know, big shock. Closed case back, not a particularly impressive movement in it. I think it's okay. I don't know how the bracelet wears. I should have asked about trying this on when I was at the. I'll have to remember that. It's reasonably thin, even though it doesn't, I believe, use a micro rotor. It's 10.7 millimeters thick. But yeah, here you go. So I get why they're not really showing off the movement. And it's fine. Don't get me wrong. 120 hours of power reserve. It's not a bad movement. It's not like a 28-24, which isn't a bad movement either. But I mean, they've done some. It's just not. Everyone looks at this and they go, "Where is the $11,000 in this design?" Especially since so much of it is similar to the old thing. And I struggle. Like, I don't have an answer for that. But this one has some water resistance. 100 meters and all that. So. I don't know. It's kind of it's a very modern take on an otherwise throwback design. I kind of like it, but I'm not in the market for it. Even if it was half this price, I don't think I'd pull the trigger on it. You see, Joel Bolt says, I'm not a huge fan of the Ingenieur logo at the bottom of the piece. Yeah, it's very modern would be the way I would say it. I think because of what they're going for, I'm okay with it. The thing is, it is a different font than the IWC logo. And when you start mixing fonts, you play a dangerous game. Maybe that's the best way I could say it. One of my least favorite things that I see usually in lower cost watches is they will do a lot of different fonts. So their branding logo is in a particular font. And that's where we're going to see the most exception. And that's okay, I think. And there's some like Zodiac and the Super Seawolf script. You can do it where it looks good. But there are others where there'll be the brand name in one font, and then there will be the name of the watch model in another font, and then they'll do something like automatic on it, and it'll be in a third font. And then they might also say how long the power reserve is, and maybe that's in the same font as the word automatic, but it's a different font size. So I don't know. It's kind of like when I do YouTube thumbnails. A lot of times, my thumbnails are awful, but a lot of times you're kind of told to be deliberately tacky. Like YouTube, they don't say it in that way, but like clashing colors and stuff, because it'll catch their eye because the colors don't work. And so their eye goes to it because it's weird. And then when you look at it, the idea is to make you go, oh, and then you click. That's kind of the thought, I guess. I don't know. So this is why you see a lot of people who I don't like putting my head in the thumbnails because I just find it weird. But I've done it more lately. I never do the shocked face with my jaw hanging open. But again, it's all like a messaging. And I think maybe the thought is with this sort of modern Ingenieur here, let me move the mouse, font here, like that's the shocked face and you're like, whoa, what is this? It doesn't look like it's out of the last century. Ingenieur. It looks like it's a vacuum cleaner company. I don't know. I speculate that was the idea behind it. But just one of those things, I suppose. Underhay says, I really like the Ingenieur. I agree it is overpriced, but I would say the Royal Oak is too. I think it's fair. You could say it with pretty much any watch. Well, maybe not the Christopher Ward. They do keep their prices very well contained. In fact, their entire marketing strategy is built on that. So they lean real heavy. And that was one of the things I reacted to about their new watch that they came out with. The almost $5,000 one, the skeleton watch. And it's like, I get your strategy and talking about your 3x the cost of the components or whatever. And that works great. I mean, people lap that up. I don't know about trying to go around telling people that CNC machining, like we should be excited that things are CNC machined versus being hand finished, and arguing the greater precision sort of defeats the purpose. I think my analogy at the time was it's sort of like saying we should pay more for IKEA furniture rather than furniture that the Amish will make because the IKEA is going to be more precise. It's like, yeah, that's not the point. But Anyway, we're not here to debate that. But Joe says, I tried on, I'm going to throw the Ingenieur back up since we're talking about the Ingenieur. I tried on the Ingenieur about a week ago. I love the dial, but the bracelet felt too fragile for my taste. I like the Chopard Alpine Eagle bracelet much better. And Scott is kind of agreeing with you. The Alpine Eagle has a very nice bracelet, very comfortable. Well, now I feel bad that I didn't talk about the Alpine Eagle. So while you stare at my head, you can hear my keyboard going clicky, click, click. And you probably heard him type Alpine Eagle, except you probably actually, if you listen closely, heard me type Alpine Eagle because I accidentally hit the extra letter, which was very, very sad. So let's throw that up there. There you go. Bradley, I love the new twin barrel skeleton from Christopher Ward. But what do we think about the machining and not hand finished though? At the price point, so you guys are looking at some Alpine Eagles right now. At the price point that Christopher Ward is doing the skeletonized watch, it's the cheapest skeletonized watch that I know of on the market, at least that I would consider to be decently made. I can't think of a cheaper one. Oris has a skeletonized watch that is about 2,000 more new, I think. And that's probably the next closest one that stands out to me. I don't like skeletonized watches in general. So I'm declaring it so just know my bias. But saying that bias aside, I would never expect hand finishing at the $5,000 price point on a movement. I just don't. So that Christopher Ward is using CNC machining to provide finishing for their skeletonized watch, I just would have assumed it no matter what. That's what they would do. It's exactly what I assume Omega does when I flip an Omega over and look at that spiraling pattern on their rotor. That's machine finished, and that's what I expect at that price point. I don't expect them to go in with a hand Dremel tool and diamond polish out and make black polish screws and all the rest of it. The thing that was weird to me was that they advertised it. It's weird. So they advertised it in a way sort of suggesting that the other companies are disingenuous about how they finish the watches. I disagree. They're disingenuous, other companies, other brands, about where their movements are, where they play cutesy little games and say, this is the caliber 3228. And in reality, it's at a 2824 with a different rotor on it. I hate that sort of crap. Most of the time on finishing, they don't say anything. They don't, like Patek isn't telling you where it's hand finished either. They don't bother. It's just you can zoom in and know, or you can ask them and find out. But it's not in the PR materials. It's just at that point it's just like a given, or you look and you can tell under a loop or whatever. So that they have this. What was weird to me was they had this high-end CNC machine, and it wasn't really half, but I'm rounded. Half the advert felt like it was an ad for the CNC machine, and that I should be excited that they bought this really cool CNC machine. And I'm not. I don't care. I just want a nice watch. And I still think as a skeletonized watch, that's ugly. So it doesn't, but that was going to happen no matter how they made it, because I don't like skeletonized watches. Theirs is not the least readable one I've ever seen, but it definitely isn't the most readable. And that's my biggest complaint with almost all the skeletonized watches. I would never buy a skeletonized watch. Who do I think makes the best skeletonized watches for legibility? Cartier. I think Cartier does the best job, and I still think they're pretty bad. So, but how their movement looked with the CNC machine, very nice. Better than the other machine finished movements at the price point? Yeah, I think probably. I'd like to see what they could do with a nice looking movement through the display case back without the skeletonizing thing. And I'm sure with their CNC stuff, they can pull that off. But that's what I'm wanting. I want nice, interesting. I have not done my post watches and wonders, but I'm gonna click on this one because this is really bad. This is like the ugliest Chopard watch I have ever seen. And the Christopher Ward watch looks way better than this. This $26,500 abomination. This is bad. This looks machine finished in all the wrong ways. I don't know if it's supposed to be just super modern looking, but I just like the back is okay. But the front, holy crap. What a terrible watch. What a terrible looking watch. Anyway, I only talked about the Green Forest watch that they came out with at Watches and Wonders because that watch looks great. But this, no. This might be one of the worst watches that came out of this year's Watches and Wonders. So when I told someone like they could get any Alpine Eagle, I lied. Don't get that one. That one's bad. Get something like this, or get this gray one. You know me and gray. If you want Lucent Steel, you can get Lucent Steel a lot cheaper than the dress watch they came out with last year. So this, like, sort of patterning and stuff, this is the stuff I like. So, but again, if you're not in the LUC line, the movement finishing out of Chopard isn't the best, but it's the dial that tells the story, and I love this dial. I've thought about these. I just don't know how often I'd honestly wear them. Patrick with Pocket Watch Time says, I'm fine with machines finished. I'm just tired of brands calling it fancy. My watch spent more time in the CNC machine than your watch. And Bradley adds in, so with all this being said, with the new Christopher Ward, does anyone think they will ever increase in value? I'm weighing in on the new tag skeleton with the sapphire case. Patrick says he does not think so because it's not limited, so there's no increase. Bradley's leaning that way, and I concur. It's such a gamble on if a watch is going to increase in value without it being limited by design, and even then, it often doesn't work. I'm still virtually patting myself on the back for when that Seiko, the revival of their original like 1968 Seiko 5, came out, and they limited it to 15,555 units. And I made fun of that and said that they were going to be plenty in a video. And I had a number of comments on the video that totally disagreed. And they're like, Dennis, you don't understand. This watch is going to sell out. They are still readily available new, including on Seiko's site. So it ain't just like old stock sitting there. 15,000 in this hobby is too much. And that it was called limited was a joke. And a lot of brands at the higher end do the same thing at a lower number, but the price is so much higher, it's also a joke. 1,000 is a joke in most instances of limited in this hobby, in the luxury tier pricing. You know, once you start getting down under 100, I think you're starting to move the needle a lot more. So as much as I made fun of the reverse time Cartier red watch that came out with Watches and Wonders, that was like limited to 25 units. That's going to probably be worth quite a bit more than they're selling it for. And it's already being sold for too much money. So, because it's a dumb watch. But so there's that. The other thing that happens is if a brand has a watch that's not limited. So like if Christopher Ward had a watch and it sold like crap and they discontinued it, and so then it became limited because demand was low, we've seen that work. But that's lightning in a bottle, and it doesn't benefit the brand. So no brand tries to achieve that. It's just occasionally there will be watches in the run, like wrong watch or right watch at the wrong time. And the brand has to pull the plug on it. And then years later, it becomes a darling. And then you find out there weren't very many of them, and it becomes valuable. But I can't even call it investing. That's like this. That's a lottery of luck. If you're going to luck into getting something retail that they ended up not making very many of. Christopher Ward is beyond micro brand at this point. So I just think there are too many. I think they make too much. It's a good thing for them. They make too many watches at this point for the odds ever to be good that would happen. It would have to be like a real ugly duckling watch, and they pull the plug super quick because they realize it's not working out for them. And I'm just not aware of them doing that with anything. So no, I don't think that's very likely. But it's not likely with any brand, really. So that's where I'm at with that. Joe says, Chopard getting hyped for dial, so they decided to do open work. Why? Yeah. Again, maybe it's just an experiment. You know, I'll respect the experiment, but sometimes experiments result in abomination. Joe Bolt says, I thought Christopher Ward did announce it was limited. They just didn't announce a piece count. Joe says, Christopher will only go up in value if Christopher Ward model becomes scarce or discontinued. Probably only the Bel Canto. You know, they limited some of the colorways of the Bel Canto, but I don't know if that's, I think they're going to make too many Bel Cantos for the, like, if you want a Bel Canto, I think you're going to be able to get them cheaper used than new. That might not be the case right now, but I think we're going to get to that space. just because they know they've got a hit there. It's made them a real big darling. There isn't a lot of competition for that complication. But I say it like that because that movement already existed. Meistersinger has a chiming watch so I wasn't as enamored by the Bel Canto. I could see why people didn't like the Meistersinger because Meistersinger and their one-handed designs are polarizing, but they years before used the same movement and have that once an hour chime thing. So it's like, if you want that, there are like that movement's available for people to be able to do that. So, I'm looking on here. I can show you guys. I went back to my Christopher Ward tab, but I wanted to do a search to see. I didn't think it. No. All right. They're not saying limited on their website for it. So I didn't think it was limited. Maybe. Now, they did say that the movement has 100 raw parts. I could see where someone might have seen the parts or something and thought it was limited, but I didn't remember hearing that it was limited. I don't think they sell very many compared to most of their line, just because this is a big price step up for them. What, $4,800? But yeah, I just didn't really. Anyway, it's an interesting approach. I just don't. Yeah, and it's pretty, especially when the lume glowing, it looks very, very legible. But I'm not enamored with it, but I'm not enamored with any skeletonized watch. But I mean, the machine finishing looks great. I mean, it's a really nice job, but they definitely deserve credit for how well it looks. So, I'd rather have that over a Yema. But just one of those things. Bradley says, I wasn't sure if this was limited with Christopher Ward or not. I know it's in the pre-purchase space now. Yeah, I think this one, no. But they've done some, I don't know. I don't know enough. Bel Canto, you're a fan of that. It's the dial. I didn't like the dial design for it, but I see why people would like it. But it's the same. For me, that one wasn't it's not that the Bel Canto has the chiming mechanism on the dial, which I'm sure is what most people really like about it. And I totally get that. The issue for me is, and I run into this on high-end brand watches as well, it's so little of the dial is for the time telling. This is why I don't like any of the Breguet Traditionnels, because they do the same. They have the same approach. They use about this much of the dial for hour and minute. And it's weird because if you have an asymmetrical watch where you've got other, the small seconds doing something and all of that, I'm kind of cool with that. But when it's like this and it's up at the 12 o'clock, I just don't like any. It's like skeleton watches. I just don't like any of it. So any of that. So then the rest of it is but I don't like how little of the watch tells the time. It sounds pretty whiny, but that's why I didn't buy one, because I think a little once an hour chiming watch is a really cool idea. I totally understood why this did gangbusters, though. Yeah, that is a very, and the price was approachable. I think it's cheaper even than the Meistersinger version. I'd have to double check that. But I think for most people, they're going to like the look of this way better than the Meistersinger. But I'm just pointing out, look up Meistersinger if you want to see another chiming option and you didn't like the style, you might like Meistersinger. It's pretty weird too, though. So all of it's pretty polarizing. Joel says, maybe the Christopher Ward was special edition. Sorry for my fake news. No, it's not. Who can keep it all straight? The only reason why I was pretty sure I didn't read it limited was only because I talked about it 2 weeks ago. Otherwise, it would have been. I can't remember which of the Bel Canto colors were limited. Were they all limited? No, I'm pretty sure they weren't all limited, but I can't keep it straight. And I'll end with Tuna's comment that the Bel Canto is great for the money, but still, it's not a fan. Well, we all have our own taste. That's the fun. That's the fun with watches. We get so much variety, and we get to talk about our tastes and stuff. And doing these sort of comments, I like to be able to, that's why I always declare I have a bias against skeleton watches. So you don't want to trust my opinion on what's a good skeleton watch, because what do I know on any of it? Bradley says, hey, now. Oh, and thank you for wow. I can't remember last time I actually had a super chat. I appreciate that. Headed out with the family. Everyone enjoy the day. Thanks, Dennis, for the content. Well, thank you for coming in and contributing. You really got us to dive down a Christopher Ward rabbit hole. And interacting with the chat is why I like to do the live stream. It's my favorite part. So Now we get to go to my next favorite part, which is lunch, because I didn't eat dinner last night because I was on planes and waiting and layovers for weather all day. So I'm exhausted. I'm done for now. We will plan to be back next week with another live stream. I have no idea what the topic is. Go to Instagram or go to the YouTube channel community page if you want to throw some potential questions out. I plan to do a pre-recorded video just doing a Q&A, totally stealing it from Federico. Hey, he's not the only one who can talk watches. I can talk watches too. Other than that, thanks everyone who tuned in live. Go ahead and if you didn't and you want to provide your feedback on what you think on certain integrated watches, what are some I should have talked about that I didn't cover? There are plenty I didn't touch. List those in the comment section. I'd appreciate it. And I'll talk to you all on the next one. Take care, everybody. Until then.